Hey everybody, sorry I couldn't be with you today. Today while I'm gone though, you are going to be working on a lab activity looking at the relationship between the intensity of a sound or sort of the energy of a sound at a certain point as your position changes relative to the sound source. The first thing we're going to need is a consistent sound source here. So we can't just talk or sing or something like that, because we can't ensure that would be a consistent amount of sound put out. So I think the best way to do this is somebody in your group is going to need to get an app for this. The one I used is called SigGen, and that's an iOS app, but there are lots of them out there. All we need is something that can produce a constant tone. So SigGen, like signal generator, is one that works. Really, there are probably a ton of tone generators, though. So as long as it makes a constant tone and not like sound effects here, we don't want a foghorn. Those things vary in volume, but a constant tone will work here. So once you have your individual app, you need to get that set so that it produces some sound. And then the whole time we do this experiment, you're not going to change any of the settings on this. So the amplitude and the frequency, the amplitude being how loud it is, the frequency being what pitch it is, those need to stay consistent throughout this lab. Again, our goal is to figure out what the relationship is between the intensity of a sound and how far away we are from the sound source. So you're going to be measuring the intensity as you change your distance away from the iPod. How do we measure the intensity? Well, we're going to use the Explorer probes for that. So on the Explorer probes, there's actually a built-in microphone. So you're not going to have anything attached to make this work. No motion sensor or anything plugged into this. So to get the built-in microphone working on this, first off we'll go to the Sensors button, so F4, or you can arrow down to Sensors. And then, gunk on the screen here, it'll tell you connect a sensor. There's nothing connected here. But one of the options at the bottom, F3, is the microphone. So go ahead and hit microphone, and you have a few different options here. We want the sound sensor, not the sound level, not the audio notes, but the sound sensor. Okay. Once we have that up, you'll just need to make an adjustment to the sample rate. You might be putting out a tone that's a few thousand hertz in frequency, so if it's only taking 1,000 samples in a second, then you're going to get a really weird looking curve. So let's go ahead and bump that up to 20,000, number 9 down here. And you shouldn't need to change anything else on there. So then we'll go back to the home. So I'm pushing down here at the bottom of the screen, home, and then to our graph. Alright, and now if I press the play button, so you can see it, if I push the play button down here, it'll start collecting sound data. Now, one thing you might have noticed with these before when you're collecting large numbers of samples is that it doesn't keep up, the graph doesn't keep up. So if I start this again and I keep talking, it says that almost no time has gone by right now, even though I've been talking for a few seconds. Then when I hit play again, it takes a minute to go ahead and graph those. What's going on is you're taking huge numbers of samples, and you're going to fill up the memory on this device really quickly. So two things you can do to avoid that. First off, take small samples. So get your tone going and then hit play, and then hit play again right away to stop it. You only need a fraction of a second worth of data here. It's going to get a lot of data in that time. Second thing that you can do with this is if you end up making multiple runs, collecting multiple sets of data, which you will, you can clear that data from your device so that it doesn't fill up. So on your graph, just press the check mark, and then arrow over to where it says run number 2, and then the check mark again. And then you can delete that run, or you can delete all runs. The run is just the name of the data set that you've collected. So I'm going to delete all of these now that I'm ready to start actually making my measurements. I don't need the test data on there. So I've got my iPod, and I'll start with it really close here. I'm going to turn on the tone first. Turn that off so I can keep talking. I'm going to turn on the tone, and then over on the Explorer, I'm going to hit the play button, so you can see it sort of. I'm going to hit the play button, and then right away I'm going to hit the play button again, so you don't need much data on this. But make sure your tone is running first, so it'll look like this. Oops. Tone on, play, and done. Okay, not much data collected there, so we're going to need to do some work to, there we go, do some work to analyze this. So first off, go ahead and do an auto scale. That'll stretch this out a fair amount. What you might see on here is some areas that look a little different from other areas. The tone that we're generating is a really consistent tone. So if you're seeing something that's kind of chaotic, that's probably some other sound on this. So we're going to focus on the consistent tone. Now that scale still isn't good enough, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the scale/move button, so F2. And now while scale is highlighted, I can adjust the horizontal scale. I can zoom in with the right key, zoom out with the left key. I can zoom in and out on the vertical scale, in with the up key and out with the down key. So you see after a minute it times out there and goes back to scale/move. So on scale, I'm just going to hit the right arrow key a few times here until I start to see something that looks like a sine curve. Alright, and it's a little bit of a strange shape on a sine curve, but that's okay. That's just an artifact of the how rapidly we were collecting samples. And then I'll zoom in the up and down direction as well, so I'm hitting the up arrow here. Okay, and then I'll use this the Tools key and go to Smart Tool. And with that Smart Tool, we're just going to arrow around until we find a high point on this. And that high point has a value associated with it. There aren't any units on this. I'm not really sure what units they're intending to use, but none of the units I'm familiar with really make sense here. So we don't know what the units are, but they seem to be consistent at least. So on this one, we get a number of 3,433 for our highest point. That's the number that we're going to use for the intensity. It's not really the intensity. It's some other calculation that the device is making, which I'm not really sure what it is, but it seems to be proportional to intensity at least. So we'll treat it like it's intensity. That'll be our data for how loud or how intense the sound is. Then I'm going to move my, so you want to record that value, record the distance from the iPod and to the sensor, and then move your iPod again. Record that distance and record this 3433 associated with that distance. Then you'll move your iPod to some other distance and do the same thing. So gather that audio data again. Remember, you can clear out data as you run through here to avoid sucking up all the memory on this thing. Just delete all runs. Okay. As you go through this, you should get data from a number of different distances. You'll notice, though, that when other people are doing their experiments, that's going to interfere with your work. So you'll want to find both some space where you can work by yourself, where you're not going to be hearing people's voices, or your sensor isn't going to be hearing people's voices. So you might need to move out in the halls for that. Please be aware of other classes working. Those tones that you're going to be generating are going to be really distracting for those other classes. So only make the tones when you absolutely need to, and don't do it near an open classroom door or something like that. Also with that, please just try and avoid, in general, making any more sound than necessary. When you're talking with your group, just talk very quietly. So if you're talking loudly, you're probably interfering with somebody else's data. The data you need to collect is a table, and then later a graph of the distance, which will be on the x-axis, and the intensity, which will be on the y-axis. And then with that data table and with that graph, I want you to figure out an equation that relates the distance away from the sound source and the intensity measured by the sensor. that's going to be your conclusion, is that relationship, that equation. Your substitute teacher for today is going to put a list of what needs to be included in your write-ups on the board. These should be done with your table groups, please, and just do one paper for your entire group. Please also rotate who's doing what with this. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to make the measurements with these probes. So part of what you are expected to learn for this class is how to make measurements of a variety of different kinds. We've never made measurements with sounds before, so this is an important thing that everybody needs to know how to do at the end of this lab. Good luck. Have fun with this. Get good data. Please talk with your group members about how to do each thing that you're doing. Make sure everybody's on the same page. If you get stuck, you're not quite sure on how to proceed with this, by all means, talk with other groups. Your substitute might be able to provide some guidance on this as well. If you need to view this video again, if you're getting started and not quite sure what order to do things in, this is available on YouTube, and I have emailed a link to you with this video, so you can check that out on your individual phones and iPods and such as you're working on this. All right, everybody, good luck. I will see you tomorrow.